Hi, I'm Amy Chalmers. I'm the art curator at the South Carolina State Museum, and this is our final video for Art Week 2021. Today we are in the current art exhibition on the first floor in the Lipscomb Gallery. The title of this exhibit is The Graphic Eye, South Carolina and the Intersection of Art and Design. Today we think of graphic design as being primarily digital, but it has its foundations and kind of origins in various methods of printmaking, typography, publishing, hand lettering. So this exhibit looks at all of those things and brings us from pieces that are from the early 20th century all the way up to today. One of my favorite sections in this exhibit is a collection of World War I posters. So this was an interesting time for design and illustration in American history. World War I was the period in which more posters were produced than at any other time in American history. By the time World War II rolled around, of course, people had access to radios, so that changed the way in which these messages of propaganda reached the public. But in World War I, artists and designers had to be incredibly resourceful with what they had, being able to make a single poster into a compelling image and message in order to get the public motivated into participating in the war effort, whether that be recruitment for the military or attempts on the home front to lessen food shortages, to participate in war efforts, and to just generate general patriotism among the American public. While these posters were not created in South Carolina, they would have been seen in public spaces everywhere. All of these posters were illustrated. They didn't use photography, really. This was mostly fine artists who were hired to make specifically patriotic images for these posters, and they employed all kinds of graphic devices that have been used ever since for this kind of design. A lot of red, white, and blue, very emotional images showing families and men returning from war, the really strong typography and bold lettering that was easy to read and delivered a very quick message, and these sort of catchphrases like V for victory. Vernon Grant was an illustrator who lived in Rock Hill, South Carolina. He was born in 1902 and he passed away in 1990. And in his career as a very successful commercial illustrator, he was actually only second to Norman Rockwell for the number of magazines covers that he illustrated during his career. He illustrated over 200 covers, and he was also notably the inventor of the Snap, Crackle, and Pop logo and mascots for Kellogg's cereal. So that advertising campaign was his own creation. Here we have an example of an original illustration that Grant created for Collier's magazine, and then the actual magazine cover itself. So you can see how his image was translated into a cover with added text and differences in the sort of color saturation and the layout of the piece. So this magazine cover was published in May of 1941, and it shows an idyllic sort of all-American scene of a couple at an ice cream parlor. This was very sort of quintessential for magazine covers of that time. If you think about Norman Rockwell and the sort of idealistic views that he had in his illustrations, this is definitely an echo of that time period and that style of illustration. The interesting thing about it that same year was when Pearl Harbor happened and the US entered into World War II. So that seriously affected the sort of responsibilities and priorities of both magazines, advertisers, and also illustrators and artists. The magazine industry took a hit during the war, but that was followed by the commercial boom of the 1950s. Jasper Johns is one of the best known artists from South Carolina. He was born in 1930 in Allendale, South Carolina, and attended the University of South Carolina for a few semesters before moving to the art scene in New York City, where he quickly rose to popularity and became one of the 20th century's most renowned printmakers. When we think about Jasper Johns and his printmaking, we look at the intersection of art and design in a really specific way. Jasper used stencils, hand lettering, layers of ink, and traditional methods that had been used primarily for commercial purposes in order to make his fine art prints. He often used layers of ink on an individual print just to see the sort of variations and different effects that he could use with the same composition. The prints that we have in our collection are a really good example of that sort of experimentation, the use of words and letters, and also sort of symbols and abstract imagery that you might be used to seeing on, say, street signs or in commercial spaces. This is actually a new acquisition. We purchased this print last year, and it's a lithograph by Jasper Johns. He created it in 1970, and the title is Scott Fagan Record. This is a record that he really admired by a musician that he liked, and he actually used the record itself to create the print. So if you can look at the surface of the print, you realize that it's actually just ink rolled onto a vinyl record. This is a really nice example of the way in which Jasper Johns liked to use different objects and methodologies to make his process very visible in his work. That concludes our Art Week. Thank you so much for watching this series of videos, and of course, if you like them, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. And also, please come and visit us in person. We would love to see you, and we encourage you to come see these art exhibits in person as well.